to the candy shop.
I taste just like candy.
To make your love and your life sweeter. Who I am Candace Harper, lovecoach.com, and I teach and inspire audacious intimacy to powerful, professional, grown women who want real relationships and seductive singlehoods. And I always say that dating and relationships can be hard, but love is always easy. And you are listening to us maybe on your TuneIn app on a smart device, or maybe you're in the garden on armedradioglobal.com. We're also now available on iHeartRadio, so if you have an Alexa, you can ask for Candy. Maybe you're joining us live on Facebook. I see that Angela is here and Lee is here. My Lee and Angela, both you guys are so devoted. I love that you always show up and you're here to participate. This is going to be a really deep, juicy conversation tonight, and we're going to cause a lot of really wonderful things, I believe. So joining us live on Facebook. I want to make sure that you're part of the Creative Love Collective. I also want to make sure that you're part of Armed Radio Group News, which is our groups here on Facebook. And also during the course of the show, you can always call in. If you're not on Facebook, 1-800-508-5431. This is a really important conversation tonight. So if you feel compelled, if you're out there and you're in the listening world and something moves you to want to talk to us, please feel free to call that number, 1-800-508-5431. And then you can also email if you're feeling like you want a more private communication, askforcandypodcast@gmail.com. And any questions you have will be answered in a later broadcast. But like I said, I'm Candace Harper, lovecoach.com. My talent is conversation, my passion is personal growth, and my purpose is to teach and inspire radical self-acceptance in myself and others so that we can all have our best possible love life. And what this show is about is each week we have lively conversations about different topics relating to love and relationships. Sometimes we'll bring on special guests. We have a very special guest tonight who I'm going to introduce you to. And always we get a chance to laugh, cry, or just learn something new. And that is why this is a conversation. We're not here to hand down a bunch of dating rules or rights and wrongs. We're not here to shame your love life. Our only intention is to create audacious intimacy, seductive singlehood, and healthy relationships. And for tonight's show, we are continuing our ongoing series where I'm partnering with other love coaches, relationship experts, sex educators, and opinionated people about sex and intimacy. It is the summer of sexploration. And the goal of tonight's show is all about releasing shame and beginning a healing process. And I know, like, normally you guys that listen in, usually it's like we're very light and we're very, very funny. And, I come and I have like this very like light and funny voice. And I can even hear it in myself, like just the topic that we're about to dive into, it has just a lot of energy around it. And that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a high energy thing. So I brought back Julia from happyfeminine.com. If you guys remember from before, she was here for our different types of orgasms. Yes. And Julia is a sex educator and sex coach who's based in New York City. And she's mostly known for being an unapologetic stand for the sexual happiness and sexual empowerment of others. I love that phrase, sexual empowerment, right? Julia has a reputation of getting straight to the point with ease and joy. Julia comes from a background of psychology, spirituality, and sex education. And she's committed to transformational work, and she continues growth in her own daily life through entrepreneurship, sober lifestyle, and relationships. And Julia helps people to return their sexual power and awaken sexual liberation within them. She is open about her own struggles in the past with body image, sex under substances, and depression. Julia is in a commitment to empower people to live authentic lives. We all want to live authentic lives, right? On a daily basis, Julia does one-on-one and couples coaching, facilitates women's circles, and leads conversations about authentic and healthy sexuality. She meditates, dances, laughs, travels, creates a life full of love and passion, and she's a perfect person for me to invite on the show. And I told you the first time you were here, I want you to come back again and again. But get reacquainted with everybody. Julia, say hi. I see Jonathan and Christina joined us.
Hi, everyone.
Right? Hi, everybody who's in Facebook Live and everybody out there. So go ahead, Julia.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm really happy to be here. I don't know how much of a perfect person I am, but I believe that any person that would end up, talking about the topic, authentically being here, of course, that, be a perfect person to talk about that. But thank you so much for having me. This is a huge topic, that's for sure. It's a huge topic. There is, I told Candace when I came, we can talk about it every year, each week, and we're not going to cover everything, right? There's so many aspects, so many little details into that goes into trauma, into type of a trauma. It's a lot, right? But we're going to do our best to cover at least, little of it in a way that hopefully will serve whoever will be listening and will really make an impact in your life and lead you towards your own healing if you're going through one, or maybe you can help support someone with the healing, or just even knowing information in general. It's always helpful, right? Because I always say we all have a sexual trauma, right?
Yeah.
One way or another. Some of us have bigger impact, it just differs. But I don't believe there's any way you became an adult in life, reached like 18 years old, and you have zero sexual trauma, right? Not meaning necessarily direct, physical or sexual abuse or verbal, but there are so many aspects that all of us socially go through, right?
Yeah.
And beliefs and religions and different philosophies that impact our sexual beliefs that sometimes are a little bit traumatizing, but
right.
Yeah.
And we're going to identify as many as we can. I mean, obviously it's like, we kind of, like you said, there's so many possibilities for how people might be traumatized, throughout their conditioning and their life and their growing up. So you kind of have to identify what is the one for you.
Yeah.
But basically what we're going to be talking about is identifying your own, and then, being able to just start your healing process, being able to just begin that. Because like Julia said, we realize this is an enormous topic. I mean, yesterday I was in a workshop with women, and there were a couple women there that work with women who've dealt with sex trafficking and been trafficked. So from that to family incest, rape and date rape, and there's just so many. And we're not just talking about women here. This is also for men. There's just so many different horrible ways that people can traumatize each other in a sexual way. And so, what we're really our real goal in this particular conversation is for those of us who have walked around with that thing that is having an impact on our relationships, having an impact on how we view ourselves, whether we view ourselves as enough, whether we're, having struggles in our careers, and there's this thing in the back of our head that's like constantly nagging. We're talking about, how do we start the steps to begin that healing, right? Yeah. So that's what tonight is all about. We definitely want you guys to participate. We want you to feel free to ask any questions or even just put in your opinions. And, if I know it can be a very sensitive thing to share. So everybody doesn't want to share their personal details. No one has to do that, but you're also welcome to do that if you want to too. We're here to talk about it and listen. We're not here to tell you what you have to do about it, because this is not a therapy session, but this is how we get aware. This is also how we become a community that understands that we don't have to be isolated in our own, and like Julia said, it's so common. It's so common for men and women that nobody has to be isolated.
All genders,
right? Yeah. Totally. So here's the thing. Like I said, I want to get into the different types of sexual trauma, or some of the different types, and the impact that they can continue to have on our lives when we go unhealed. And, we're not, like I said, we're not presenting lessons for victims or anything like that. What we're doing is how do we start to explore how healing whatever we've been through will make a difference in, what we're up to, what we'd like to have in our lives, how we'd like our relationships to be, right? How we like to approach our love lives, right?
Love lives and lives in general, because sexuality is our life energy, right? So it really impacts when there's any kind of a trauma in the sexual, in the sexual energy, it blocks all areas of your life, right? Yeah. So it's not even about healing the love life. It really has an impact on your financial, on the way you feel in your body, in any kind of other, we're probably going to speak about that, alcohol abuse or substance abuse or eating disorders or any addictions, or it's so many other, so it's really, it touches up everything. All areas of your life. Yeah,
absolutely. What I was thinking too, and we'll get to this part too, as I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking about how when someone is impacted, or if someone, let's say, is victimized by sexual abuse, it impacts everyone in their lives. Like you think about, let's say you have a mother who was sexually abused as a child. Now she may or may not, be able to do some healing or be able to work on it or go to therapy or whatever. But either way, it's going to have an impact on the kind of mother she's going to be, the kind of wife that she's going to be. Same thing with, if you have a man who's sexually abused, it's going to have an impact on how they show up in the world. Absolutely. So it's what's important about it is not so much that we, think in terms of how can we punish those who do it? It's how can we get ourselves to a healthy enough space that people don't do it. Do you know what I mean?
It's not only even like, definitely not to punish those who do it, but it's actually also create a healing space for those who did it, right?
Yeah.
Because the person did some kind of a mistake or chosen certain action, it doesn't mean that we need to,
everybody needs the healing.
Yeah, everyone needs the healing. That's what I mean. I get that sometimes happen situations that our first reaction may be just, I wish the person would be dead, right? Or they don't deserve to be alive on a planet, or we have a different thoughts coming from reaction into whatever happened. But everyone deserves a healing, right? And whatever action happens, it happens from the core of someone else's already previous trauma, right? So even when we speak about healing, about sexual trauma, it's not only sexual trauma for the person who was a victim, or who experienced, who received, let's say, it's also who was creating that in that sort of way. It's healing for everyone, both ends, and we cannot diminish people just because of something that they did. So it's healing for everyone.
Yeah, and in the healing, then the idea is that if I'm healed, I'm not then going to pass the abuse on and be ready to
absolutely. It's like cutting the cord. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's just identify some different things. I mean, there's always the we could say, the obvious ones like rape, which I mean, there's so many different types of rape.
So many different types of rape, and it all have different effects depending who did it, the age, the type. Was it a continuous one? Was it,
Yeah. So rape, incest, molestation, sexual harassment. But you also say, I was reading when I was doing some research on our topic, I was reading in your blog article, you said that there's certain types of sexual trauma that are like people don't necessarily talk about that also have a big impact. Tell us about those. Yeah,
I do believe that, as I said, we're all traumatized one another way, right? And they're like obvious traumas, like you said, obvious meaning that the clear event happened, you had a clear, result out of that, and that you experienced that, right? But sometimes we'll go through life and there are things going on around us, or maybe towards us, that we not necessarily connect with social trauma, like with sexual trauma, right? So for example, lack of sex education, or the sex education that we got, right? Or when most of us, at least when we were growing up, that sex is sin, right? And we may got it from school, from our parents or guardians, we may got it from our religions, authorities, whatever, whoever was
so you're talking
in our
about
lives.
Like the shaming,
right? Yeah. That sex is sin. For example, if we would, a few of the traumas that I mentioned in the article, if you were called like masturbating or touching yourself, and someone told you, and it was like, don't do that ever, right? That's not good. Shame on you, right? All that stays with that, like right? All the social things that we see, in the movies, and so we compare ourselves with other people. I don't look that way. It means, it means something about me, right? Boom, right there. Religion or any philosophies that we have in our life that we believe, and if that philosophy, maybe any spiritual philosophy, and anything like, if they have a certain view on sexuality, you're gonna follow that without even realizing that the view might be not accurate, let's say that, right?
Like if you're gay and you're in a pray the gay away kind of family, right? That's traumatic.
That's traumatic.
That's
considered
right? Sexual trauma.
Especially if you're gay and you're like in the church, that it's like, everyone knows that it's extremely traumatic, right? And then don't necessarily the exact abuse needs to happen, right? So all those kind of, I don't want to say little, because it's not little, but all those things that we not really connect, but they still there. It's really, there is still much more religious, social, the way body image, the way it's really, it has a huge effect on us.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I mean, the idea is to just think for obviously whoever's out there and listening, you do have to sort of do a little soul searching for yourself. If you feel like there's some things that you have around sex, whatever shame you might be feeling, like just, a little, I guess sort of a self-exploration, like, how to discover what my trauma might be. And that this is not to say, maybe you feel great and it's going great for you and that's fantastic. But if you are in this conversation where it's like, that there's something there that needs to be healed, this is a good opportunity to just kind of identify it, because we're going to talk about like the different steps to begin the healing. We're not saying these are the rules, this is the only way you can do it, but these are just some suggestions and things, right? What were you going to say?
I forgot. What I was saying, I'm getting there. I don't know what I was exactly thinking, but it's really an opportunity to look how you feel even around sexual conversations. What are the words you use to, identify your genitals or sex, or how often do we use the body words for cursing, right? Or calling people
like
certain ways.
You were talking about this in your workshop. Why do we call somebody a dick?
Or asshole, right?
We make it a negative
exactly, right? But then it like stays in our head as a negative, and then it's like, we think that it's not, but it does. Our mind keeps record, right? So just stuff like that, and even like how we, how do we feel around like sexual conversations? Maybe I feel with you a certain way, but maybe with my mother I will not talk about masturbation. Maybe with my partner I'm not going to talk about it. Like how do I really navigate? And there's no right and wrong way to go around that, but it's really know what's going on with you, because in the end it still affects the way you approach sexuality, right? I always say the definition that you have currently in your life where you are around sexuality is going to affect how you have sex and how you're going to show up in your sexual journey, right? Because that's how you approach it. That's how you define things.
And it's probably also what you're saying, like as far as the little microaggressions of how our culture approaches sex is part of what supports this sort of violent, dangerous, sexual, energy that can be in the air a lot of times. If you think about how we're so conflicted, where it's like it's this wrong thing, and we like you said, use such negative words, and it's how we insult each other. Like use a pussy. It's how we insult each other, right? But then on the other hand, we want it to then be something that is revered and for whatever rule, like religious rules we think it should be for. So there's such conflicting messages. It's no wonder that it becomes this violent thing where people express themselves in very twisted ways, right? Or ways that and by twisted, I don't mean predilections. We all have our preferences. But anytime that someone else is being forced.
Unconsensual, when you have something, there's no rules how to have, expressing your sexuality or have sex, right? As long as everyone is in agreement. You can do anything you want as long as everyone is happy and consensual agrees to that. And it's interesting too, because in the reading and doing the research, the thing that just kept coming up, and I so understand it, and I'm sure everybody out there will too, and I'm sure you will too, Julia, this idea that anybody takes away your choice. Absolutely.
I think that's part of the reason why it's so traumatic, even as a child, because even children know that they're naturally supposed to have a choice over what happens to their body. They instinctually know that. They may not be able to have that language, but and as we grow older, it's like the idea that someone just takes something from you, like the control of your body, whether you're a man or a woman, it's that's it's unconscionable. That's why it's
when
so
it
traumatic.
comes to, if we're going to take, for example, sexual abuse as a, in terms of rape, for example, it's a power play, right? It's a power play when you feel powerless, when the moment when the power was taken away. If you are forced to be silent, there's a moment when you use your voice, when you use a sexual voice, when you think that, that's where so you go through life believing that your voice doesn't matter, that you have no voice. Right, it's really or you take the other extreme, proving that you have a voice, and then it turns into aggression because it's coming from the wound, right? So then people who are really trying, be in there and being dominating with what they say and opinionated, all this stuff. Not like everyone that's opinionated will have a sexual assault, of course, but in the nature that it impacts. It is really it's a power dynamic conversation that it's really it's important. It's important.
So that's why with all of that said, the idea here is how do we begin, especially as adults who are a few decades in, myself included, how do we allow ourselves to start down that path of healing it? And it everyone's healing process is different. It really definitely is about finding something that works for you. But I guess the encouragement here is that if there is anything, it's worth looking at. And it's worth just, finding that self-care and finding a way to love yourself through it. And so here are some things. I found this article on lifehacker.com by Vanessa Marin. She's also a sex therapist. And her whole thing is to help people have way more fun in the bedroom. But she also talks about healing sexual trauma because she's in this conversation too. So we're going to go through kind of what her steps are and like put our own licks on it, and so to speak. And, we'll go through and see what we come up with. So her first thing she says to do is acknowledge the trauma, which is basically what we've been saying, right?
Yeah.
She says, first and foremost, it's important to acknowledge that you've been traumatized. Denial, distancing, and minimizing are extremely common reactions for sexual trauma survivors. And she says her clients say things like, that happened so long ago, which I feel like that's such a common thing, especially when you're an adult and you remember like somebody, even if it's just like a molestation or, you saw someone, adults naked too much, or you were exposed to things that were beyond your, emotional capacity at 6, 7, 8 years old. Those kinds of things. And a lot of times we stuff them down like, oh, that happened forever ago, so it's not that big of a deal. Or other people have it worse than I did, which, we all have our own threshold for stuff. So she says it's difficult to acknowledge sexual trauma because it's something we don't want to have happen in the first place, obviously. And having to acknowledge it feels even more painful. And a lot of male survivors struggle to acknowledge sexual trauma since they stereotypically believe that only women can be victims. So she says that her suggestion is, if you catch yourself minimizing your trauma, you can say to yourself something like, I know it's hard to acknowledge that I've been abused, but it did happen and it needs my attention. I deserve to acknowledge what happened to me and to heal.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really, I think we spoke a little bit about it, but just put, a few more cents in. It's acknowledging the trauma and knowing that something happened that affected you, right? And most of the times when I work with people, it's never one thing. Most of the times it's, I saw my parents having sex when I was that time and I was told not to tell anyone, right? So keeping the secrets conversation starts. Then a few years later, I was, maybe raped, and then a few months later, something else happened. And it's usually, it's a multiple things. It's never usually that this one event that happened, right? Because again, as we go through adults through life, it's hard not to be exposed to certain things, right? That are kind of actually out of our control. So really acknowledging that and knowing that it impacts you in maybe obvious way or maybe not in such an obvious way, but because, if if there's something happened and clearly you didn't ask for support that didn't, heal that, where would it go? We trust that, with the time it kind of healed. Well, yes and no. It really does not. The wound gets there, right?
It's cancer.
Really, exactly. And it will manifest in a certain way, right? And sometimes it manifests in a physical way. And a lot of times manifests in a physical way. Just sometimes it manifests in such a physical way that it actually impacts our life on a planet. And sometimes it's just some kind of a thing like a stomach ache or migraine or back pain, like stuff like that. But it goes somewhere. It doesn't just disappear. It's not like, we cannot wash it with the water, right? Unless you do it healing with the sacred water, like somewhere in Bali every day, that helps. But it's not something that you can just, it doesn't go away. So acknowledging that something happens. I always, when I work with my clients, I always, do like sexual history, write down sexual history, make sure you put all the things, for women, and sometimes includes, abortions or body image or being touched when we don't want to be touched, right? Even for men, sometimes the cause, I caused an abortion, it's all, can leave a trauma. I had tons of conversations with men with around that, but it's really, knowing that, this is what happened, and actually take a look. Even if you think that you had no traumas, which, it's absolutely, valid point, of view, but like write them down, like write your sexual experience and actually see,
look at it,
that didn't affect anything. That my grandmother told me that sex only after marriage, that really didn't have any impact on the way how I show up in my sexual life. Like really question that, because there's always something. So that, the acknowledgement part of really being in a commitment to go into that conversation and let me see, maybe there is something, right? Maybe why I feel certain way about women, maybe, about my body, about naked people, right? Like, what isn't there? So I believe that there's always something.
There's always something. But here's the thing too. There's something about it too, like in the acknowledgement, because I think a lot of times the fear of the acknowledgement means that I then have to admit that there's something I'm ashamed of, or there's something wrong with me, or all the things that I've been telling myself about whatever it is that happened to me and making myself wrong about, that it's true if I acknowledge it. But the miracle of acknowledgement is not only do you get to free yourself from this idea that you are isolated in your issue and your experience, you also get to find your community. You get to find other people who've been through, if not the same thing, something very similar. And like Julia said, start to realize that everybody's got something. And, you know, even if we cross into the realm of non-sexual abuse or, you know, other kinds of trauma, like everybody's got something where they would be able to say, I get it. But if we isolate ourselves, you know, out of a non-acknowledgement because maybe we're concerned that it will hurt people in our family, or someone will think something badly about us, or, you know,
my partner will leave me.
My partner will leave me. I mean, that's exactly how we manifest all the things that we don't want, right?
Exactly.
It's in that resistance. So the encouragement is just to consider that, you know, it's like that in the acknowledgement there might be freedom, and however that
and healing.
Right? And however that works for you. And the second one to that, which, you know, works along with that, is don't blame yourself. Right? So she says on the other side of the spectrum, a lot of sexual trauma survivors blame themselves for what happened. Society and the media can be immensely victim blaming, and it can be hard not to internalize those beliefs, which is totally true. You may believe that you're at fault due to the clothing you were wearing, the way you acted, things you said, the situation you put yourself into. A lot of people who are victims of child sexual abuse, like a lot of times they grow up, you know, from childhood and are blaming themselves. Like I was bad, or I did something I shouldn't have, and that's why I deserve that. So, you know, I think, what do you say about the way she says, don't blame yourself? I usually try to stay away from don't do this and don't do that. Because that's, you know, I think that can be ineffective. But what do you think is a good?
That, you know, it's, I just want to mention also to that, because I think, I mean, maybe important that it's blaming self, you know, but it's also, as we grow up, the blame turns into much bigger blame. So we're not only blaming ourselves for particular abuse or what happened, we start blaming ourselves for everything, right? Oh, she did something that it's my fault, right? Oh, I should have, I would have, I could have. It's like becomes a blame conversation for life, right? That we really start to just really looking into that.
Or it becomes, not to interrupt you, it becomes the avoiding blame situation for life, which then becomes the I take responsibility for nothing, which is just perpetuates victimization. I don't want to put too many like layers on top of it, but when I don't want to be blamed for something, I don't want to take responsibility for it, and I perpetuate that everything is happening to me.
Yes,
and that I have no weight,
power, no control.
I have no power and no control. And when control has been taken from us in the first place, you know, perpetuating that sense of I have no control, I have no control, I have no control, it just puts us sort of in a vortex of
And you know, you say you don't want to put in many layers. The truth is there's a lot of layers.
There's a lot of layers.
It's a very complex. It's not, you know, it's not white or black. It's not right or left. It's a really, you know, it's those things that has tons of layers from different sides, right? But coming back to don't blame yourself, right?
What would you say would be the positive? It would be
I lost it. So the don't I also not in the conversation of don't blame yourself, but it's a really, you know, and I'm in agreement with what she says, but you know, to continue that is really, I'm a very, you know, huge kind of proponent, I guess the word is, of finding the meaning, right? So any sexual journey or any sexual trauma, event, experience, anything as any spiritual experience or as any, you know, like it's always finding the meaning behind that, right? And instead of trying to, don't, you know, didn't happen or did it, actually look into that, right? I'm a strong believer that life is holistic and everything that happens is part of growth, is what we needed. I know that sometimes with our Western kind of views, it's hard to admit that such a darkness as, you know, rape or any kind of abuse can be part of sacred life, especially if it happens to kids, you know, but the truth is that, you know, everything has energy, right? And there is, the way that I believe in it, everything is holistic. So instead of kind of don't blame yourself, find a way of healing inside of that, finding a meaning, finding a way focus on it, right? I know it's a much bigger conversation that, it's like another 5 hours, but it's really finding the way how you can accept, because every spiritual journey, every spiritual healing, and sexual healing starts with actual acceptance, right? It starts with an acceptance of yourself, right? From your self-trust, of acceptance that what happened, of acceptance of really being comfortable in your body and your experiences in your skin. It's not a one-day thing, right? It's not that you woke up in the morning and decided I'm going to be accepting and I'm healed, like right? Yeah. It's work, and sometimes the lifelong work, right? It's really it's being in the process of that. But it's really, for me, it's like accepting what happened. Finding the healing inside of that, and knowing that whatever's happened, not in a way that it's my responsibility, but there is a reason for you that is actually serves you in your empowerment, or on a planet, maybe to serving to other people, or open up a growth. Like I believe that everyone has certain experiences in life for growth, right? For me, our purpose in life is service, right? Service for other people, and to actually reaching that kind of a spiritual peace and growth. And everyone has different experiences, right? Someone becomes, an alcoholic, someone has a sexual abuse. Some, we all have these different things that actually can cause us, if we look into it from the grace point of view, actually cause us coming a better human being, right? Most of the time serving other human beings, but that's my approach, right? Really finding peace inside of that through work. And it can, it's not, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's, it's worth it. It's really worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
that was a long answer.
It's okay. That's all right. I just want to say hi to some of the people that came. Like,
hi.
Yeah, we got Jonathan, Christina, Montgomery, Brian, Joe, Roberta, Roy, Guillermo, William, and Roy again, or Roy says thumbs up, and Penny and Mary Beth and Michael and Kevin. I love that you guys are all here. That's awesome. And feel free, you guys, if you want to interject, if you have opinions about, how to start a healing process, if you know a little bit about how one starts a healing process, or just, begins down their exploration. And I think everything that you said about the, how to get out of that space of blame, Julia, is like right on the money. And I think, and I think too, we're leading into the next thing that Vanessa Marin says. She talks about being aware of potential impact. So, I mean, that's worded in a way, it's like you potential impacts as to me is like what's already happening, not like, I don't like cautionary, but I do like the idea of like what's already happening, what's already showing up in my life, what's already showing up in my situation. And she listed some of the ways that you can kind of identify whether something might be there for you as far as, suffering from your trauma. And she says things like getting scared or jumpy when you're approached, talked to, or touched in specific ways, feeling very hyper vigilant. And by the way, let me just reiterate that this is for both men and women, because
all the other genders.
We always assume that only women go through this, or people who identify as women, we assume that it's, it comes from weakness, and victimhood is about weakness, and it really is not about gender at all.
It's everyone.
Right? It's everyone, and anyone can be forced, out of their control. So having a hard time trusting others, if that's something you experience, feeling scared of losing control, disassociating during sex, like if you feel like you have to go somewhere else mentally, low or non-existent sex drive, a difficulty getting turned on or reaching orgasm, feeling disconnected from your body or even hating your body. You mentioned that one, Julia. Like the body image thing is, we don't usually, I don't think necessarily associate that with a sexual trauma, but it really is.
Oh, it is.
Like it absolutely is, right?
It's how you're feeling. If you were, some people, there was mentioned dissociate with the body. Some people then try to hide, right? So it's like the eating disorders come to that, right? For some people, overeating, or the other way, right? Some people who are,
I see that, not to interrupt you, but I do see that a lot, because when you see, I started watching that show on TLC, My 600-Pound Life. And one thing that definitely reoccurs is there was some sort of sexual abuse or some sort of abuse. And the idea is like, not only is the food sort of satisfying the need for a feeling good, there's also a level of control, and it's protection. It's like, how can I,
the layers.
yeah, how can I add, it's almost like armor. How can I add as much protection as I possibly can? That's
Absolutely.
really common.
Absolutely,
Go ahead,
yeah. No, it's all good. It's all inside of that. Yeah, that is some people who are, have a, the beautiful people, right? I mean, meaning they're all beautiful people, but meaningful based on criteria, right? So they can feel uncomfortable because they always feel guilty for that. So my body is, they become like a sexualized object. And it's a really, it has a tremendous effect on that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I just stopped because someone said something.
Yeah, Lee says everybody experiences trauma differently.
Yeah.
There can never be the assumption that everyone can or cannot cope with trauma or cope equally. Trauma is very, and the reaction is very different. The coping is different. The traumas are different. There is definitely no size fits all in anything. That's why I think we're kind of mentioning a lot, trying at least to mention maximum things as we're going with the time, because it's definitely extremely individual experience, and there is no one way to go about that. And with that said, the balance to that though is, because I know I've done, not necessarily sometimes maybe around sexual trauma, but any kinds of problems, even when I was dealing with depression, it was so isolating to be like, this is only me. Mm-hmm. This is only my problem. And while I absolutely think it's truly, and it's true what you're saying, Julia, we all experience it differently. The important thing is that we understand that we all experience, right? And we all have our own personal ways to process it, but it's really important that isolation not be the direction.
And isolation actually goes top on this list, right? On top of impact. The isolation is one of the things that trauma survivors, any trauma survivors, go into. It's really like, because again of all the conversations that we covered before, but it's really, isolation is a huge part of that.
Yeah. So if anybody's out there listening and you want to call in, 508, what I do with that number? 508-5431. Call us, especially if you are one of these people who's out there and the impact that you're having is isolation, right? And let's see, she also says not knowing how to make healthy and safe decisions about sexual activity, sexual pain conditions, and health issues like vulvodynia or UTIs. So all of these things are, I think, not as much impacts as they are symptoms.
Yeah,
it's cause impacts.
It's both. It's kind of a both, right? It's really kind of a both. But I mean, this is list. It's like 5%. Oh my God, 5% of everything that the list is huge. In reality, the list is huge. It's much more than that. There are physical, emotional, spiritual impacts. And we mentioned a lot of them. I feel that we spoke, but this is not even maybe the top. But I mean, it's a great list, absolutely fantastic list. Yeah. But clearly she was not writing a book here. But the list is really huge, and if someone who really wants to look into it, it's someone to have a conversation with a professional. But yeah, it has huge impacts on life. We go through it. We're not even connecting to that.
Right. Like just scratching the surface. And that's the thing too that we're saying here. It's like, just an invitation to just start it, to start the conversation. There's so much to be said for the value of community and just the value of, and here's the thing. I don't know if you read Brene Brown. She talks a lot about vulnerability, right? And, this is like Lee was saying, this is an extremely vulnerable thing to be able to admit that someone took control over you and that you didn't have a choice in the matter. It's an extremely vulnerable thing. So you want to find a safe space, right? You want to find, if you can find a clinical space, that's ideal, right? But then also there's something to be said for if you're not at that point and you're not ready to go that far with it, just someone that you love and trust. Like just find somebody that you can get out of the isolation and just talk about it a little bit.
The start is the point, because the second you open your mouth and you share, the healing starts. Yeah. And then the healing is such a thing that there is only that much that we have to put into our own healing. I mean, there's always work that we need to do, of course, but there's a lot of things that actually happen on its own. I don't want to go really woo-woo, but it's really go. So when the second we open our mouths and actually start,
I go woo-woo.
I go woo because I'm coming from academic point of view, and at the same time, from spiritual perspective, but at the same time, I'm a very woo-woo person, so it's kind of all that together, but. Scientific as well, but it's really once we do the step, the universe does like 5 for us, right?
Yeah.
Once we do 1 step, the universe will give like, give us the people, give us the right books, the circles will come, it will come, right? We just need to kind of really like go with the flow and here, trust our intuition, connect our heart with our action, and actually, and go with the kind of a flow with it. Yeah, but even the starting point to even speak with someone, it's already a starting point for sure.
Like you're already beginning.
You're already beginning your journey. Yep.
Now she says this thing, which I don't know if I fully agree. Vanessa Marin from lifehacker.com says the thing about identifying your triggers. So I guess what she's saying is, she says sexual abuse survivors often get triggered by certain actions or words. Try to start gathering information on what triggers you. When you feel scared, uncomfortable, or nervous, or when do you feel scared, uncomfortable, or nervous? When do you feel disassociated? What words, actions, or activities don't feel safe? I mean, I do think there's something to be said for like identifying when you're in that space and going ahead and being able to, in some modalities they say take out your observer.
Yeah.
And like if I'm in a space of like anxiety.
So the idea is to identify them, but there's like.
Well, she's saying like to sit and try to make a list of the things that trigger you.
Oh, just a list. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you can do that.
Yeah, it's never, any work. I mean, it doesn't harm, right? It's good to know. It's good to know because then you can connect. Mm-hmm. So, if I don't know that, if I'm not aware that touching is triggering me, it's like you can touch me and then I'll be in reaction, but I'm not even connecting that I'm always in reaction when I'm touched.
Yeah.
Then I'm kind of not going to know there is a trigger, right? So it's good to know your triggers because it's, again, then you're able to heal them, right? Because when we repress or hide and we're not aware about the things, we cannot heal them. The healing starts when we're aware of something, like, oh, this is there. Let me now, let me kind of then be with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the list is, it's a good thing to have. It's not something to have and then run away from that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's
here's the thing. Here's
yeah.
where I think there's a slippery slope, because I think sometimes when we are focusing on so if I identify my list of triggers and then I don't give myself the space to allow myself to feel the triggering, but not make it my identity.
Yeah.
I can't be touched in that.
That's what I meant, yeah.
It's very easy to go to that place where it's like I feel like this thing or this thing or this thing is always going to set me off. Yeah. That takes me out of the space of really healing.
Don't avoid your triggers.
At
least,
the
I mean, I don't sound like don't avoid triggers, but know what triggers you and slowly try to become friends with that. Right,
like
so
accepting
it. It's a long,
and what is it trying to tell me?
What is going on in there, right? Like look deep and like
don't ever touch me that way because as opposed to why am I feeling this? And what's it trying to tell me?
Exactly. And we're not we're not saying that if touch is a trigger, we're not telling you go on the streets and like be touched by everyone. Like small steps, right? It's not like, oh, this is triggers me. If I'm triggered to be naked in front of my partner, I would not go naked on the streets, right? But I probably would like that. That's not going to be healing. That's going to be more traumatizing, right? Yeah. So figure what it is and take slow steps. What feels safe for you, right? Safety is like key, right? You want to be in a trusting environment, like you mentioned before, when you share with someone who you trust, because you want to you don't want to be in a healing environment, right? You don't want to put yourself to lose somewhere that people will not understand you, or like you're gonna get more shamed, or you're gonna get more trauma, like that. That's not the solution, right? It's better to take a slower step in a safe environment. Not to stick there, like keep going steps, but instead of like really jumping from the jumping.
But I think the gist of this one, I mean, for me, I think what I'm getting out of it is like in the identification of what triggers me, like how I can be with it.
Yeah.
Be with it and not make it something that I use to control my atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, oh, this is it. I'm not going to go there. Yeah.
Yeah. And really listen. I mean, here's the thing too. We always talk about this, listening to our intuition and listening to our gut and what our body's telling us. And, the thing is a lot of times we just feel something and we react, or we feel something and then we take a medicine or we drink something or whatever to try to fix it right away. But all that stuff is really good. Like the feelings that we automatically associate with negativity, like tears. I told you I was at this thing this weekend, and we were doing a sharing thing. Sometimes when you're a personal growth junkie like myself, you get into these situations where people are sharing with each other. And so we were sharing, and I had tears come, and a woman said to me afterwards, she's like, "Oh, don't cry. It makes me feel so sad when you cry." And I was like,
that's a great point.
Yeah, but here's the thing about tears are amazing. The reason we cry tears is because we need a release. the reason that our bodies feel a certain way or they react a certain way is because they're trying to tell us something, that something either needs to come out or it needs to be loved on or it needs to be looked at and accepted. So I think that's the ultimate thing, is just to, and for men too, it's like just realize that, the negative feelings, the anger, all that stuff that comes up.
There is pain. The pain that is where the growth happens. It's really, and sometimes I know it doesn't feel nice. I know it's not the best place to be, and sometimes we just want to like get out of our skins and like, or like change the, go back in time, or have a drink, or do some other stuff, or go have sex, or go drugs or XYZ. But in reality, that's, the growth doesn't happen when we like jumping around and playing, and being happy and everything is great. Growth happens in pain, right? Mm-hmm. That's where the place of where we become stronger, right? So any pain is actually fantastic. The pain is actually, your body or your mind is telling you that there's something to work on, right? There's something to work on. It's a message from the universe that tells you, okay, something is not working. If something is going, somewhere. That's the message to look into, right? But the point that you made that I really want to make sure, because you said, the woman told you, don't cry, it makes me sad. Yeah. And that's what we do. Like, because people are uncomfortable with tears. Yeah. We're so fast to be like, oh, I don't want to, but this is because I'm uncomfortable. This is my own stuff, but we're putting on other people. The same with the pain, right? Oh, don't be in pain, take something, One
of my mentors, and I said this to her, I was like, one of my mentors always says, mop them, don't stop them. Like, you can dab with the tissue and everything like that, but let them come. Yeah. And
we're so like fast to nurture someone with like, oh, don't cry. Like, that person doesn't need that. They need like, take into the heart the pain. Yeah. Right. When you feel pain, I always meditate and I'm like praying to take everything through compassion. I'll kind of use the heart as the filter. Yeah. With any kind of trauma, with any experiences that are not pleasant to me at that point, I feel that they're not pleasant, right? Like really taking into the heart and filter through compassion, through love, to make that heart muscle strong. So anytime next time it happens, instead of reacting to what happened or to the person that supposedly created, the pain, I'm actually have a strength to live with that, right? And react differently. But we're so used to like, no. Yeah.
Like placating, meditating.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the thing too. I think the reason that we do, and we're such a placating, medicating culture too, and this is sort of veering off a little bit, is because we are so opposed to what we consider our negative feelings.
Negative as a bad. Yep.
Yeah, like we always feel like we immediately have to feed something or fix something or band-aid
and that's
something.
What always needs to be happy. Like, if I don't feel good, it's bad. I need to feel good, which is absolutely not. In any trauma, and I don't want to like go away from the conversation of a trauma, but even if a small experience happened, sometimes we're being touched when we don't want to be touched, right? Or sometimes we have sex that we're like, I don't really want to have it. I don't know what happened. It's like, and then there's still, the mark is left, and we feel shitty about that sometimes, right? But we're so like, connecting to this conversation, but we're so fast like, oh, I need to feel good, so therefore I need a drink, or therefore I need this and that, or make myself happy, and we cannot even sit in the pain instead of like sitting in meditation and actually being with the pain. We're running somewhere, let me call my friend, let me call my girlfriend, let me but like, no, just be in the pain.
And it's scary. Like, there's no doubt being in the pain is very scary, but allowing the pain and getting through that tunnel is the path to the freedom from it. if you really want to be able to release the fear of it, it's like going ahead and
if you're not gonna heal it, it's still gonna hunt you.
And it's gonna stay a big scary monster.
And it's gonna come back, because the lessons, there is the lessons that we need to learn. If we don't learn them for the first time in a way that we, in learning, I mean through acceptance and compassion and that, then it still comes back. Yeah. Just look differently, but it still comes back.
True. Yep. All right, people, you can participate in the convo if you want to. I see Shawnee. That's exactly who I was talking about. My mentor, Shawnee, she always says, mop them, don't stop them.
Hi, Shawnee.
Hi, Shawnee. And Rory and Nessa-Jean Baptiste. Thank you guys for being here. And we are getting, I think we're going to make it all the way through, Julia. I didn't think we were going to be able to do it. So Vanessa Marin, all right, Vanessa Marin also says, which I do actually really agree with this, and we touched on it a little bit, about taking really good care of yourself. So she gives like suggest the usual suggestions they give, right? Taking a bath, sitting in the sun, cuddling with your pet. Those things are absolutely valid and fantastic. I think that's true. But I think what we were talking about earlier touches on it even more deeply. Like I don't know why I've been in this. I recently lost like about 32 pounds, right? So I've been a little bit obsessed with like I said, watching this show, My 600-Pound Life, and the psychology of why we put on weight, or why, we get into spaces where we're not necessarily taking really good care of ourselves. And I think that what we tend to gloss over is the taking care of yourself is sometimes being uncomfortable, meaning like, making your body sweat and eating really healthy foods because it's going to actually chemically make you feel better. Like when you've been through trauma and you've been through something, as difficult as it is, it's even more important. I think for me, it's even more important that I'm really loving on myself in a big way. And that can mean, manicures and pedicures and stuff too. That's all good and it's all valid. But I don't think we talk enough about like the real, like making sure you're going to the doctor, whether you're into holistic medicine or, Western, whatever, like those kinds of things, making sure that your vital signs are all good. Like that kind of stuff, people don't tend to look at when we talk about loving and accepting ourselves, right?
Listen, sometimes I say, I love myself. I'm going to eat all jar of ice cream because I love myself. And then the next day, did it.
Like I'm taking care of myself. This is what I really want right now.
This is what I want.
Yeah.
Not really, but that's what I really want to touch up on, because I definitely agree with all that. The hot bath, it's amazing. The sauna, there is extremely the stuff that we can do. But also to go deeper into that, because we're going so deep today. It's really even with that jar, right? I love myself so much. I'm going to get ice cream, jar of ice cream right now. But it's really, what do you really want right now, right? And that comes from that self-love.
You mean asking yourself that question.
Asking yourself, what do you really want at this point? What is the jar kind of hiding?
I want chocolate chip cookie dough or love and connection.
Or love and connection, right? Or just want to, because sometimes calling. So your friend will take that, take the desire to have a jar, right? And I guess sometimes the one I don't know. But the reality is also, what we sometimes forget to talk about or loving ourselves is things like journaling, like seeing a therapist, like talking to someone, like going to the circles, right? Of healing, meditating, right? Acceptance. I can take 10 baths per day, do 5 manicures per week, get my hair done, and I know tons of people like that, right? I can look, the perfectly, but inside of me, I feel shitty because I'll be judging myself all the time. I'll be hating on what I do. I'll be comparing myself to other people. I'll be making these illusionary ideas of how should I be, right? And so that's not going to work, right? And no matter how many times, how many baths you're going to take, the self-loving is acceptance. Yeah. No matter where you are at this moment is where you are. And not meaning that, this is where I am and I'm not going to take any steps, No, meaning that accepting where I am, but still going forward with, growth and improvement, mental, physical, emotional, whatever that is for you in that moment. But it's really having that kind of self-coaching inside of you to talk about, no, it's okay. Yeah. Like I
accept everything about
I
you.
accept, like, right. Yeah, like we're gonna finish this, and we're gonna go both ways. We're gonna sit and be like, listen, we should have done this, we should have done that, this one, that. Or we can be, listen, great job, fantastic, give me 5, right? And one is healing, and another one is creating the vibrations. Everything is vibrations, right? So when we go through all that negative, we create vibrations around ourselves that actually cause, harms us. Right. So really healing it's a lot in doing, but it's also around how are you being with yourself and about all those traumas and about all, anything in your life. Yeah.
And being okay with yourself.
Yeah.
So Lee says, as a qualified mental health professional is really important. It takes real work to understand and work through trauma.
Absolutely.
And that's perfect, because that's the very last one.
Yep.
It's about getting support.
Yep.
So, and I think less and less, because I think that, you're a little younger than me, but I think I'm very much of the therapy generation. Like Generation X is that first generation where it was like, put your kids in therapy. Like nobody was doing that before. So there's a little less stigma around, getting therapy and talking to people and things like that. But what I also say, beyond whatever one-on-one medical clinical therapy that you can get, is I'm a big believer in workshops and groups and personal growth type workshop. I actually, my mentor that I don't know if she's still on or not, my mentor Shawnee, she has one. It's the Be the Tree Rites of Passage for women. And I know that there's a ton of them out there for men and also different genders and combinations, but because I really believe in the community piece.
Yeah.
So going out there, getting professional support of somebody who's a great leader and being part of a healing community, I think is a really, really big deal. Yeah.
It's definitely getting support. It's, and it's like for everyone. It's not only if you have like something extraordinary obvious, but it's like for everyone.
Yeah. But even if you're minimizing it and thinking it's not that big a deal or something small, absolutely, there's a community.
The only thing I just want to really, put into that, choose what works for you, right? There is no one size fits all. There is whatever. Some people are more into, woo stuff. Some, like they're doing their own spiritual journey. Some people more like, clinical. Some people like workshops. Some people were like whatever is for you, right? The only thing that I'm always kind of encourage people is to find holistic, right? So if you find a professional, make sure that professional kind of covers not mental, spiritual, physical aspects of that. And a lot of people who go to therapists and a lot of stuff just do not get covered inside of that, right? So all care, like make sure that it's like the style that they use, it touches on different things, and they can, if they don't do that, that they will offer you resources like especially for sexual trauma, somatic work, psychosomatic work is extremely important, right? Then there is depending on the trauma, of course, there is, movement therapies, like stuff like that. So finding a therapist or any kind of a support that will actually integrate different things versus just, let's have a conversation, right? Yeah. So not that there's anything wrong with that. Absolutely not. I always, therapy is amazing thing, but make sure that you kind of, mix and match what works for you. Yeah.
All right, Julia, tell them what you want them to, how you want them to find you.
You can find me at happyfamily.com or sexedwithjulia.com. It's the same website. I do workshops in New York. I do online workshops, circles for women. I do monthly now circles for women in New York. That's the easiest way. If you want a private coaching, that's also on Sex Ed with Julia. You can find all the information in there.
All right, awesome. We're getting shorter on time. So here's the 3 ways to make your love and life sweeter this week. If anything we said resonates with you, reach out to someone, one of us, someone you trust, even if it's a hotline. I'm going to put the link for the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. I'm going to put their website in the comments. If you think that someone is being abused, follow your intuition and help them in the best way you know how. And the third one is, as scary as it may be, allow yourself the opportunity to begin a healing process that works for you. We're at 30 seconds now. So thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for, we always have to rush through. An hour is not long enough. I want like 3 hours to be talking about things. So email us, askforcandypodcast@gmail.com. For my single women over 35, I have the Secret Art of Seductive Singlehood. I also have a healing program in my coaching too, so you can reach out to me for that. And like I always say, until next time, never forget that you are a love machine. If you start to feel like you aren't getting the love you need, just make more and then ask for candy. Thank you, Armed Radio Global.
Thank you.
And Facebook people who are I think the Armed Radio left us, but our Facebook people who were here watching and online with us and commenting. Lee, as always, I love that you participate. I'm sending you a love. Right now, I'm sending you a heart. I'm going to do it somehow. Thank you for being here. And I love you guys. All right. Have a great night. And, like I said, I'll put all the information for hotline and all that stuff. All right. Take care of yourselves. Love yourselves. All right. Bye.